You're listening to Straight Shooters, a straightforward golf podcast that'll straighten out your game. And here are your hosts, Keith Bennett and Henry Stetina.
All right. Welcome back to the Straight Shooters podcast. Today, we've got a firecracker of an interview for you. We were joined by Richard Lee, who is a short game coach, practice coach, ex-PGA Tour player, probably still has the goods to go play out there. He's still figuring it out, man. But we learned a lot from this guy in an hour. It was a master class on mindset, perspective, parallels between life and golf, a little bit of short game technique mixed in. And we really got a nice little insight into what he feels is necessary to take it to the next level in golf. And, talked about finding a mentor, talked about asking for advice. And he had some really cool things to say, and I'm really looking forward to introducing this interview to everybody. But, Henry, what did you take away from this interview?
Yeah, man, this stuff was pretty awesome. I was looking forward to this interview. I think he hit it out of the park. He was very humble, very vulnerable. He talked a little bit about his upbringing and how he took a very non-traditional route to get to Division I golf and then to the PGA Tour. I loved what he shared about some of the life lessons that his family taught him and some of the mentors that he had in his life. The stuff on the PGA Tour and how it's a very friendly, family-like environment amongst some of the tour players was neat. And then I took a whole page of notes on some of his coaching techniques. I mean, he really nailed it, dude. He touched on some of the things that you and I really enjoy talking about, and it was something that we can look to as a person who has lived it, who has played at the highest level. And he really just breaks it down so simply for all of us and for all the viewers at home who can take something away from this, play better golf, enjoy the game more, be better coaches, and basically just enjoy life. I mean, he had a lot of good stuff in there.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he approaches it from a growth mindset.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
No indication of a fixed mindset there. He's just looking to get better. He's looking to help his players get better. And it sounds like he's really just looking to help his players, become better people and gain, better perspective. He kind of says golf is sort of secondary and, life is really what matters, family, life, enjoyment, process oriented. So really cool stuff, man. So without further ado, I really want everybody to pay attention to this one because it's one you probably want to listen to again, a couple months from now after you've done it today, because you'll listen to it a couple times and you'll unpack more stuff every time you do. But here is Richard Lee, and let's get into it.
Let's go. Cool. Welcome back to Straight Shooters. Keith Bennett, Henry Stetina here. We're got an interview with Richard Lee, a professional golfer, swing coach, short game guru. We're looking to get a lot of good info out of him. Keith, you want to kick us off today? Talk to us a little bit about what we got going on.
Yeah. Super excited to be joined by Richard this morning. I've had the opportunity to be around him a little bit on a golf course. I don't know, Richard, if you remember, we played a little practice round together at US Open sectionals a couple of years ago at down in Oregon. And it was just cool to watch you go about playing a practice round and talk to you a little bit about the game. But I'm really looking forward to getting more in depth with kind of your background as a professional golfer, how you rose through the ranks, the sacrifices it took to get to that point, the mentality it took to get to that point. I definitely want to talk to you about your Q school run, going 5 under for the last 5 holes to make it by a shot. I think that's pretty sweet. And we could definitely learn a little bit more about how that went about and how you got it done there. But yeah, I think just for the listeners, let us know a little bit about kind of you as a background of growing up. How did you get into golf? How did you make your way to the University of Washington? And we'll start there.
Yeah, guys. Well, thanks for having me on the show. Yeah, I mean, my golf journey definitely has been a little different from the get-go. So I didn't start playing golf till I was almost 14 years old. So I was not a fan of golf. I was a soccer player first growing up. I love soccer. I love, basketball, all the high speed energy sports. And I was never like, I watched golf a few times. I'm like, man, that looks boring. I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And one day my dad was just like, and none of my family members really played golf. And my dad was just like, "Hey, do you want to play golf?" I'm like, "You know what? Sure, I'll give it a try." I still remember to this day, the first day I went to the driving range. It was at Bellevue Municipal. I don't know if you remember that place, Keith, but
Oh yeah.
that is the first driving range I've ever been to. And I remember, I was terrible at it, of course, 'cause I've never played golf.
Yeah.
But I remember hitting like one good shot, and I was like, "Hey, this is kind of fun."
Yep.
And that's how I got hooked into it. So fast forward a little bit, I went to Newport High School in Bellevue. Um, and I got into the game, and I was sucked in. I was addicted. Like every day after school, I'll go practice. And ever since I turned like 16, I was like, man, this is what I want to do for my life. Like that's how accelerated my career, or my dream of aspirations as a golfer, happened from going from starting at 14 to saying, I want to play this for the rest of my life in 2 years. So I went to Newport High School. I took a very interesting route. So my dad, who lives in Korea, had a family friend that lived in the Philippines, and had a son who was about 5 years older than I was at the time, played on the Asian tour. And one of the winter breaks, I actually ended up going to Korea to see my dad. And then we actually took a short trip to Philippines to play golf and hang out with those guys. And from that, I was like, gosh, man, this is like the life. This guy plays golf every day. The weather's perfect. He's playing on the Asian tour. And to me at the time, I'm like, dang, this guy plays on the Asian tour. It's a big deal. And, fast forward, I actually ended up taking a break, or quote unquote, dropping out of high school to move over there, get homeschooled and try to, in my mind, I was like, okay, if I play golf every day with a good player, I'm going to get better. So my dad and I decided, all right, I'm moving to the Philippines. So I moved to the Philippines for about a year and a half. And I loved it for a little bit, because I woke up, did a little homeschool, go play golf every day. I mean, as a 16-year-old, who wouldn't love that, right?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Fast forward, I realized, and I come back every summer to the States and play some like junior tournaments and stuff. But like, I just kind of felt like I got to a point where I was like, you know what? The amount of the time that I was spending in the game, I was getting better, but not at the rate that I expected. And I missed home. I missed my friends, and, kind of got homesick. And after about a year and a half of doing that, I decided to come back to the States. And of course, my homeschooling, the credits weren't enough for me to get me back into where I started. So I made the decision I didn't want to get held back. I didn't want to go a grade below, my friends and not graduate on time. So I was like, you know what? I'm just going to take my GED and go to a community college. And that's how I ended up at Bellevue College.
Gotcha.
And and the funny thing is, the year I got into, after I got my GED, got to Bellevue College, that's the first year they restarted the men's golf program. So it kind of was like the perfect timing, junior college golf wasn't great competition, but it was still competition. You still had to, there's always, I always thought there was like 5 players that you actually had to compete against, every week. And fast forward, played 2 years there. And then I got recruited to play at University of Washington, which was my dream school to begin with, growing up there and being a Husky fan. I played 2 years there, and had 2 great years at University of Washington. Was able to be an All-American both years. And that kind of led me to playing on the PGA Tour, and or actually I got on the Korn Ferry Tour right away after first stint at Q School, and then the year after I was able to get on the PGA Tour, and it's been a roller coaster ever since. But I feel like golf is a roller coaster on the course and off the course. So
Absolutely.
that's a little bit about myself. I forgot, I missed out a big part. I was I got married my freshman year of college, and had our first kid right after that. And now she's 13, and we have another little one who's 7. So I was pretty much an interesting journey from the beginning. Then, and the fact that I was married and had a kid in college, playing college golf, which is also unusual. So
Definitely.
definitely a different route than most, but here I am. Yeah.
You know
Wow.
what's really neat about that story, Richard? It's just, getting to the beginning of how you got your journey going in golf. But I think it gives so much hope for so many people, because a lot of people think that the route to the PGA Tour, to college golf, is a specific way. And you've taken all these kind of winds throughout your journey, going overseas, coming back, having issues in college, going through junior college golf. You definitely overcame a lot of obstacles. And then obviously getting married and having a child early on. I mean, you've definitely gone a different route and have been able to be really successful doing that. I want to commend you on that right from the start.
Oh, thank you. Appreciate that. Thank you. Yeah, it was a lot of time management for sure. And I had a lot of help too. I always say you can't go on this journey of golf or in life alone, So having the right people around me and, just supporting me through what I wanted to accomplish. And that's, been a huge part of where I was, be today, really. So, but yeah, thank you for saying that. Appreciate it.
Yeah, that's cool. Does, looking back, does it seem a little crazy now to say like, okay, I'm going to go and move to the Philippines and play golf? I mean, did you have any evidence at that point that like, what were you using as evidence that you could be a professional golfer? Was it scores? Was it, kind of comparing yourself to your friends? Does it look a little nuts now looking back at it, or does it seem pretty normal still?
Well, going to the evidence aspect of it, honestly, I don't know what came over me to think that going over there is going to say, oh, that I was going to be able to accomplish what I wanted to accomplish. Because I started late, right? And in my freshman year in high school, like I was good, but I was not playing any AJGAs or,
Yeah.
I mean, I wasn't even winning any WJGA stuff. Like I was pretty good, but like I wasn't even like the best player locally. And I don't know what it was. Maybe it's something that deep down, I just knew that this is what I wanted to do for my, with my life. Yeah, looking back, it is a little crazy, but at the same time, I feel like I always felt like golf is what I was meant to do in a weird way. But I really didn't have any evidence to support that, to a point where, I'm going to be this amazing golfer that I can make a living out of. But I don't know. Yes, looking back, it is a little nuts. I would agree. I'd admit. Because if my daughter, who's 13 now, said in 3 years, "Oh, Dad, I'm gonna move out of the country and pursue my soccer career," I'm gonna be like, "You're insane," it is interesting looking back for sure.
At what point of your career early on like that, do you feel like your career blossomed? Was there like a turning point where you really got better, or somebody that entered your life? How did that happen?
Yeah, that's a good question. Joe Teal, who is an amazing instructor / mentor of mine in the state of Washington. So I always say anyone that came out of Washington that's had some success had either been coached by Joe Teal or had some form of influence. So I started working with Joe when I came back, obviously, from the Philippines. And I still talk to him to this day. And he's the one that's kind of helped my game go from, just for me, my idea of getting better was if I put my time and effort into it, spending 10 hours on a golf course daily, that I was going to get better. But yes, to a certain extent, I did get better, but I felt like I wasn't very efficient at practicing. I was just all about hard work, put in the time, you're going to get better. And through working with Joe, I started to realize, what? If you work hard, that's awesome. But if you're working hard with the wrong things, hey, you're not really going to get much better. And with Joe's influence in my life as a coach and as a mentor, when I came back the summer after I played my first year of junior college golf, and one benefit for me when I got to playing junior college golf, like I said, going back, like the competition wasn't great, but like I still had to beat out the handful of players that I played against. It taught me how to win, like it taught me how to finish a tournament. And all the tournaments were like 2 rounds, so it wasn't like the regular 3-4 round tournaments we play now, but like I still felt the nerves of trying to get it done. I still felt, okay, I'm, one shot ahead with 2 holes to go, or I'm one shot behind or whatever. Like I felt all those things. So I really give a lot of credit to being able to win, even though the competition wasn't as strong. And the summer after my freshman year, that summer, I won. There's a local tournament called the Seattle Amateur.
Oh yeah.
It's a small amateur event in Washington, but we get a decent field.
Yeah.
And then I was able to win that. And the week after that, or I won that, and then the year later I won it again. So I won it 2 years in a row, and I'm like, okay, I'm winning some events. And then 2008, which was like the summer before I got it to UW, I actually ended up winning the Washington State Amateur. And to me, that was the biggest win of my career to the point. And that course played at Moses Point, in middle of nowhere in Washington. I was able to have this third round. I still remember it was a kind of a breezy day, and I don't know, it was one of those days, you call it the zone or whatever, everything just clicked. I was able to shoot 62, which was 10 under, and to this day that is still my lowest competitive round.
That'll work. That usually gets it done.
Yeah. And that was a tournament then that was call it evidence or whatnot.
Yep.
That really gave me some confidence. And that was the, tournament biggest win before heading into UW, which also gave me confidence going into UW, knowing that I was going to be playing against much better competition. But it gave me that extra, okay, I can compete, I can win some big events. So that's kind of how I, that was a big turning point, I would say, in my career, and kind of my stepping stone into my journey.
So on that topic of learning to win, because I think that's a really important one for junior golfers, and you hear it all the time, you want to win in your backyard before you try to win, in someone else's backyard. You want to win at your level. Obviously that has been very important in your career for a confidence builder for one, but can you elaborate maybe on, that topic of learning to win sort of is vague for a lot of people. It's like, okay, you got to learn to win. Was it a mindset thing that you took? Like, I'm better than everybody else here? Or was it more of like working with Joe and working on cleaning up a few swing things? Or was, what actually got you to the point where I'm, near the lead with the, one round to go, and, I'm going to put up a score that I need to win this thing? Or it could be, did you get better at just playing one shot at a time, and then you kind of finished the round and, hey, I'm at the top of the leaderboard type thing?
Yeah. I think for me, it's a combination of a lot of those things. But biggest thing, so I've shared this with other people before. So I always say the best advice I've ever gotten, it was actually from my mother-in-law. Being married young, she was almost like we're very close. And she gave me this one advice. She goes, Richard, when you play golf, just welcome the ball. I'm like, okay, welcome the ball. So what does that mean? She kind of elaborated, and it was more like wherever the golf ball ends up while you're competing, you gotta welcome the situation with the right attitude and the right perspective. Okay, and we're all human. We're all gonna hit bad shots. Like, oh, I hit a good shot. Oh, I was a yard short and plugged in the lip of the bunker. Okay, well, yes, I can get frustrated. I could be upset, but rather, just welcome the situation that you're in. And I think that was such a good advice that I've gotten, whether it's through golf or life related, right? Because there's a lot of things that we can control, but there's a lot of other things we cannot control. So I think for me, that was like a really, really good advice that I've gotten, that I've taken to this day. I really, really think welcome the ball, those 3 words really, really I really took that to heart. And that really led me to taking, playing every round of golf with the right attitude and right perspective. Knowing that if I can do everything that I can to control, my emotions, my pre-shot routine, my club selection, my commitment level, like my attitude, and then not so worried about the result itself. It's kind of weird to say, but it's like, that really, really helped me, you know, when I'm in contention or when I'm about to, or if I lose a tournament or whatever. Like I always walked off the course thinking that, I did my best.
Yeah.
I gave it all I had. And if I can honestly say that to myself after each round, then I look at that as a success and a growing opportunity, because, you're going to lose more than you win playing golf, and you're going
Oh,
to
yeah.
hit a lot of bad shots. And it's just I think it's the attitude and the perspective that I was able to look at everything through the lens of welcoming the ball. That really, really helped me grow as a player and as a person. And that's a message that I share with a lot of people now, in my coaching career as well. It's just so simple, yet it could be so deep, and I think golf and life is so relatable in so many ways. And that was the big, big point in my career.
Man, that's really cool. That's just like 3 words changed everything. And it was
Right.
like, yeah, that's really cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love how you bring in the parallels between life and golf, and welcoming the ball and taking every situation for what it is, playing one shot at a time, one hole at a time, living one day at a time, taking all the moments in life as they come is so powerful. You got to be doing a fantastic service for your students in coaching them golf, but coaching them life through golf.
Yeah. Yeah, because I feel like I've had great people around me growing up, and I had a lot of trials, and life can be hard for a lot of people, right? And we have life throws you a lot of curveballs, and same with golf. And the kids that I coach now, although my staple is not big, but it's slowly growing. But even every kid my hope is that, yes, of course, I want to help you with golf, but if I could make some sort of an impact on your life as someone who's done it before you, or as a mentor, or as an older brother, or as an uncle, or whatever, like that is something that I would love to look back and say, you know what, I did my best. And whether they could become better golfers or not, of course I wish and I hope that I can help them become better golfers. But more importantly, if I can make them more prepared for life, I think that will be a better, more of a it'll bring me more satisfaction or fulfillment, you know what I mean? So I think that's what I strive to do. And there's been so many great people in my life that's helped me get to where I am, and love to give back in some shape or form.
Yeah, that sounds like coaching rather than teaching, right? I think those are 2
Yeah.
very different things. That's cool. So I want to come back to that when we get, kind of later to your kind of now coaching career, because I think Henry and I can totally relate to that of wanting to connect with our students on a deeper level. You can talk about P1, P2, backswing positions, all this stuff all day long, but are we really making any change in that person's life or their mindset? So, I think we can definitely talk about it. I want to talk about your time at UW a little bit. And, when you got there, was it, like you said, was it a little different? Okay, now I'm around people who are maybe a little bit more accomplished than what I found at Bellevue College. You played golf on the team with Nick Taylor, who's a PGA Tour winner, who you've also coached. And so what was that like? What was the competition level like? Were you guys all just hungry to kind of one up each other? Or was it was that a cool mindset to go out in qualifying and, just try to beat up on one another? Or, talk me through that a little bit.
Yeah. So when I knew I was going to UW, I knew, obviously they had a lot of great players on the team. And Nick was obviously one of the better players on the team, and I knew. And, the cool thing about our team was, at the time, I think Matt Thurman, who's now at ASU, who was our head coach, created a good culture, where it's very competitive, but we're also very, we actually liked each other,
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, I knew, like, I remember like looking at like the summer scores, like, oh, how's this kid playing? How's that kid playing? Or, how's their career been so far? Kind of just doing some sort of research in my, just to say, okay, how do I stack up with these guys? And you never know till you actually go and play against these guys. But I knew, like, going in, I was, confident that I'll break the lineup pretty quick. I just felt like I was kind of on an upward trend of kind of when I was coming into UW, I felt like I was getting better every year. So of course it was unknown going from junior college competition to Division I competition in the Pac. Well, it was Pac-10 back when I was playing. But it was. I remember the first UW always does this first tournament is our home tournament. We usually play at Gold Mountain, and we always had this one day. You play 54 holes at Tumble Creek in Suncadia. I mean, you wake up in the dark, we play 54 holes, and that was part of our qualifying. And I remember it was a long day, very long day. And
that's not an easy walk out there either.
No, we had to walk the first 36, and we got to ride the cart on the last 18. But I remember like it was like one of those windy days. It was playing tough. I remember I was able to break in the lineup. I believe Nick got the number 1 spot. I think I might have been either 2 or 3. But going in, and then our first event, the Husky Invitational, I think I played decent, because I remember my first 4 events as a UW player, I was able to finish in the top 10. All those events, in which I didn't know what to expect, but after the first tournament, you finish the top 10, you're like, okay, I can do this. Like, this was overall pretty good event. And then you do it again, and then you do it again, going to a different tournament in California. That's when I really knew, okay, I can really, really compete with these guys. So, and every time, during qualifying, they're at home, I always felt like we had, our number 3, 4, 5 spot would almost change almost every week, because, the team was deep enough that, it's who's playing better. So always felt like we had to compete to keep our job, or not job, spots. And that, I think in sense that made everybody better though. So I liked the group of guys that we were with, because everyone could break in and take your spot. So, it set us up for success in a lot of ways. And I love the culture that Matt Thurman brought, where we had a lot of fun, but when we're competing as our best ability. But we really all got along, which was really nice.
So Matt never guaranteed anybody a spot. It was like whoever's playing the best is going. Or
right. The only guaranteed you'd have is, I believe, if you I think if you finished top 10, you had a spot for the following week. So obviously those first 4 events that helped me to secure my spot, but there was no such thing as, if everyone played poorly, everything's up for grabs. So
right.
That was kind of the environment that we were in.
So you mentioned having a good mentor, a great work ethic, sometimes working 10 hours a day on your golf game, high competition, regular competition. I have kind of like a 2-part kind of idea question that I want you to enlighten us on. What seemed to have separated you from your competitors to make the tour? And then what kind of do you feel like has kept you from reaching the next level?
Yeah, that's a good question. That's something that I asked myself to this day, because sometimes I believe sometimes even when I was playing regularly on tour, I was like, how did I end up here? And how did some of my buddies not get here? Because I know like they are just as good or better at certain things than I was, and the crazy thing is, even now, like, I feel like there's so many great players that never make it. And, I asked myself that question. I'm like, okay, what is the difference? What catapulted me to be able to go play? And, I don't think I can put a direct answer to like a one specific answer. To me, it was combination of, I think anyone that, I don't doubt, there's a lot of players that have a great work ethic that unfortunately don't make it. And I think it was a combination of being able to apply what I practice, and getting better at how I practice, and getting better at how do I bridge the gap between my practice and my play. So a little bit deeper into that would be kind of like, okay, it's not about just banging balls all day. Okay. It's about having some sort of part of my practice to be dedicated to some of like mental process practice, or like, okay, how do I prepare for a shot that is a between club with, you know, different boundaries, and just being a little bit more specific in my practice, having some more like game type situations. And as my career developed, I actually liked doing a lot of work on the golf course itself. If I could go on the golf course, you know, with not many people around, and I could have the time and the freedom to hit a bunch of different balls with different lies and different situations, I think that helped me bridge the gap between working on something on the range and then actually being able to play golf. I think there's difference between swinging golf and playing golf.
Couldn't agree more.
Yeah, and I think that was something that I took pride in, and something that I was like, you know what? Because there's so many times where I could just flush it on the range and go on the course and be lost, you know, like, and I'm like, oh, what the heck? I just hit it really good, and I just can't. I just doesn't feel. I don't feel that freedom or to go play golf. I think my biggest, you know, thing that I look back and said I did, because you know what, if I'm being completely honest with you guys, I would always say, you know, my short game was always pretty strong part of my game, but my ball striking was always a little erratic. But what I did take pride on is that I had the ability, or I think I had practiced that if you dropped me off on a golf course and I had my C game or D game, I just know I was gonna get it done, dink it around, hit a low cut, low draw, whatever. Like how ugly it is, I knew I could get it done. Like that, I think that was one of the skill sets that's underrated. Where when things are going, you know, south,
yeah,
okay, I gotta buckle up and get it done. I think that's something that I was good at, you know, in a weird way. Like it's just the ability to just get the ball in the hole, you know. And it's so cliche, right? Just get the ball in the hole. Like, but like, how do you do that? Like, you know, are you okay with, you know, 150 yards is usually like my full 9-iron. Like, are you okay to like chip a 7-iron, like, you know, hit a dirty cut or whatever? Like, it could be the ugliest thing ever, but can you get it done? I think that is something that helped me develop and also be okay and not freak out when things are going south, you know. And I think that was one of the skill sets that helped me kind of take it to that next level. And second part to that question, Henry, would be, okay, what else could I've done to get better? And I'm still trying to get better. Is I think my level of consistency in my short game practice of like, okay, these are the things, like A, B, and C are the things that I'm always going to check and always, you know, never veer off, you know, like some things that I always check. So like the example that I use is like, if some random person comes up to you and goes, hey man, why do you do it this way? And if I can say, oh, this is why I do it, A, B, and C, and I do it and I believe in it, and that's all that matters because I'm good at it. I've had that with my short game my whole career. With my long game, I was a little bit more like, a good example would be like, you know, someone comes up to me on the range, like, hey man, your swing looks a little out to in or whatever. I'd be like, oh, really? Oh, maybe I should try. You know, I was more like, I didn't have that certainty that I had with my short game, that belief that I had. So I think that's the area that I felt like if I could take what I had in my short game to what I have in the, you know, and apply that to my ball striking, I think that is something that will, and that's something that I've been kind of working on as a coach and as a player still, to being a little bit more solidified in what I believe in and not veer off so much. So I think that would be the next thing that kind of helps me, you know, take it to that next level.
So on those points, I love what you just shared with us. You felt very confident and effective with your short game.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit of doubt in your full swing, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
But yet, whenever you seem to need to scrape it around or play, you know, pretty bizarre type shots, you were always able to perform more appropriately.
Yes. Yeah.
So just from a mindset standpoint, I'm curious if your short game is very outcome driven. This is what I want the ball to do. I see it landing. I see the trajectory. I see the rollout. And when you're scraping it around, thinking of curving it high, low, fades and draws, whatever you have, are you thinking ball flight related, what you want to do with the golf ball? But the go-to mechanism for your full swing could be something that has to do with the form of your swing. backswing, forward swing, technique wise?
Yeah. So I think that my athletic ability came out more, right, when you're struggling in a weird way. Like I think when I struggled more is like when I've had, okay, I'm going to try to, I know there's a lot of opinions on having swing thoughts and having, one swing thought, 5 swing thoughts. And I think everyone is different. But for me, when I would get in trouble playing or hitting golf shots with my ball striking is if I had, in my practice, if I had a lot of swing thoughts or a lot of things that I'm working on, if I can't transform that into more of a feel, I had a hard time. So when I'm struggling, I'm literally throwing away all the visual, all the look preferences that I have in my swing. I'm like, okay, my swing needs to look like this, and then my club needs to be here, blah, blah, blah. I literally throw out the window because I'm like, okay, if I don't figure this out, I'm shooting 80. So it's like, that all goes out the window. And I'm like, you know what? I'm going to see this ball. I got a back right pin. I'm just going to hit this dinky cut or, low draw, high draw. Like, it puts me more in a mindset of hitting shots, kind of like my short game, right? So it's kind of like, okay, how much spin do I need to put on this? Is this a regular bump and run, or is this something like a little floater that I wanted to bounce twice and check? It's just everything becomes more external. So I think that's as I speak to you guys about it, I'm like, dang, I should have done that more often, but it's something that almost comes out like when everything goes south in a way. It's like my last resort kind of defense mechanism in a weird way of putting together a round, if that makes sense. I think that's a skill that I feel like more people need to practice to take it to that next level, because competing with the best guys and being around a lot of good players, they all have some sort of stat. You know what? It's like when things go south, all right, how do I go from shooting 75 to turn that into 72, or can I turn 72 into a 70? Like just a couple of shots where, I'm sure you guys heard this, like you can never win a tournament in the first round, but you can definitely lose it. So, it's kind of trying to put together a couple of rounds and being able to, because I always think you need like two decent 9 holes in a 72 hole tournament to be in contention. Like what I mean by get hot for 2 nines, like whether it's in the second round, the final round, just get hot for two 9 holes and kind of stay in it. You got a chance. So that's kind of, how I look at it.
That's cool. I mean, I want to unpack that a little bit about, that kind of mentality of putting the ego aside of like, what does my swing look like? Am I hitting the positions I was working on in the camera on the range that I was grinding on for the last week? Can I ditch that, trust that it's good enough, right? And just lean on my instincts and lean on my visualization and get a little bit more external, almost kind of immerse yourself in the shot. Like, where's the wind coming from? What's the lie doing? What's the green firmness, right? Is my ball checking when it hits the green? Is it not today? Sort of immersing yourself in the shot itself, because I think what a lot of people struggle with, and I think it might be the culture and the time we're living with, is all we see on Instagram is like, oh, well, this guy's swing is perfect technically, right? Or whatever we consider to be perfect. He must be a good golfer, but chances are we'll probably never hear that guy. Because it's not all about swing position. It's not all about what your swing looks like on camera. It's, can you get it done? Can you play golf? Can you hit the shot? Can you do what needs to be done? So do you find that is something that you really impress upon your players when you're coaching them? Because I also know I've seen in the past that you really encourage, competitive practice. Like you get people together just to compete and, to essentially learn how to win. So I just want to go a little deeper into that. What do you think? Do you think that's a really important skill for people to be able to put aside their swing mechanics and what they've been working on for the last week and not be tied to making a swing on the course, but rather that visual of playing a shot?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, I always tell my junior players that, guys, like, reality is when your game is on, you can probably play good on most golf courses. Like, when swing's feeling good, everything's feeling on point. But I always say, guys, that's really rare, that everything is clicking at the same time. And I always say, okay, if your A swing is not there, you got to have a mechanism for your B game. You got to have a swing thought or a feel for your C game. So it's always like, you got to have options. I always try to encourage that, like, because playing competitive golf, I always realize most of the time you're always kind of teetering around your BC game, and everyone has different expectations of what their A games and B games are. But to me, I think you gotta have like a BC game. I call it like a toolbox, right? You gotta have the more tools you can have, the more chances of you being able to, go through a certain scenario or go through a certain type of round that you're playing. If you're always stuck on this one feel and, my game has to be this way, then you're not going to have much success. And playing golf, we're playing on a different every day, every hour it changes, the conditions change. So you got to have the ability to adapt. So that is one of the big areas that I try to tell my, players that I work with is like, hey, listen, like, this is what your A game looks or feels like, but what does your B game look like? What does your C game look like? Have an idea so that you can pull from it. And I love the idea of competitive practice. And I love getting some of my buddies like, Andrew Putnam, Scott Stallings, and Scott Langley, when they're around, I love getting some of my junior players to play with these guys because, these guys are on the PGA Tour competing. It's so neat for the junior players to see, first and foremost, okay, how good are these guys? How much better are they than me? But also, I can actually keep up my drives with these guys, or I could hit some iron shots just like these guys, Like, there's so many benefits of being around good players. And I try to encourage that. And like competing amongst themselves, I think is a huge thing because, golf is competitive, and it's the idea that, okay, if we're having some sort of a wedge contest or a chipping contest, or if we're just trying to beat each other playing 9 holes or even 4 holes, like it puts you in a moment that, okay, I got to get it done, So it's like, throw away the technique and all that. Let's just figure out a way to get it done. I think if we can encourage that kind of practice, I think it'll help just breed more like that edge or that, that grit. So I think it's very important as a developing golfer to be in a competitive environment and always go find players that are better than you and just, hey, let's go play golf. Well, can you give me a tip? Or like, don't be afraid to ask questions. What worst thing they're going to say is no. Well, then move on. But most people that at least I've been in contact with, if you ask them a question and be respectful about it, like they're willing to help. So, yeah. I think that's an advice that I like to share is like, hey, don't be shy. Like, go find the best player at your club. Go find the best junior golfer in your town. Like, hey, let's go play. Like, there's no ego involved. It's just you just trying to develop. Like, you're just trying to get better yourself. Like, who cares if they beat you by 10 shots? You're learning a ton, So I think that would be a good thing that people can adapt and not be afraid to be like, okay, I know you're way better than me, but can we go play? Like, I'd love to learn and get better.
That's great advice.
Yeah. So
that's great advice from a player standpoint and a coach's standpoint. You just given me a great idea to get the local college golf team and PGA students involved in my junior golf practices.
Yeah, I think it's always awesome. And a lot of these guys love giving back. Golf is so awesome in the fact that nobody started out as Tiger Woods, right? So it's like we've all gone through like the steps of like, okay, junior golf, high school golf, like college golf, like professional level. Like we've all kind of gone through the ranks, right? If you're at a certain level. So when you look back, it's like, oh, there's a kid that's, just about to play high school or whatever. It's like, I remember what I used to be like. Oh, if I give them this tip, this will be very helpful, And I think it's a great environment to be in. And I think that's it benefits everybody, in my opinion. I think the one thing that I learned from coaching is that the more you verbalize what you preach or what you like to share, it's like you're almost telling that to yourself as well. So it's kind of like this cycle of like, I'm giving you what I've learned, but also I'm reminding myself at the same time. So I think there's a lot of benefit in just being around, whether you're the better player or you're the player that wants to learn, there's mutual benefits to everything.
That's cool. And it's almost like a recognition of, I didn't get here without help.
Mm-hmm.
So, kind of giving back because I've gotten so much, help from other people.
Right.
And like you said, nobody is going to shut that kid down who's coming to ask for advice, right? Unless you're the biggest prick in the world.
Right.
They're always going to give some time, because they're probably going to be more impressed that the kid had, he was wanting to learn, right? I think that's the more impressive part. When someone comes up to me and wants to learn, I'm like fired up. I'm like, wow, you're the 1% of all the 99%. You're the 1% who actually wants something, wants to learn, has the boldness to even come up and ask and kind of put that ego aside, like admitting, hey, I don't know everything. Can I get some advice from you? So just circling back quickly to your time on the PGA Tour, did you have any mentors or friends out there that you leaned on for practice rounds or, teach me the ropes type of thing? How did you go about navigating that? Because that's the biggest stage in the world for us golfers, right? I mean, and when you got out there, it must have been, a little intimidating at first. Did you have anybody that kind of helped you navigate those waters?
Oh yeah, 100%. I mean, I still remember the first tournament that I played in. It was a Sony Open in Hawaii, and I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm here. Like, there's like,
that must have been crazy, man.
Yeah, there's like, oh, there's a guy that I grew up watching on TV hitting next to me, and like, there's this guy, and like, it was very intimidating at first, like, because I was in a new environment. I was very blessed to be there, but at the same time, it was very intimidating. But yes, like, one thing that I did, I was not afraid to ask questions, so like, I remember like, Kevin Stroman, who's a good friend of mine now, but like, and Aaron Badley, like guys who've been out there that I've, got to know, but like, I'll just be like, hey guys, what do you do in this kind of situation? Or like, how do you hit this shot? Or like, what, like, I'll just, like, I wasn't afraid to ask questions, my thing was, all right, if they say no, it's a no. Right. But like, majority of the guys were so good about giving me advice. And one of my biggest golfing idols, or call it a role model, was like KJ Choi, right? And that being a Korean golfer, like I remember like first time meeting him on the putting green at Sony Open, I was like, oh my gosh, it's KJ. I call him the godfather of Korean golf. And this guy is like right there. And I just walked up to him and I told him, hey, I really admired your career. And, he was like, I never really got close to KJ because, like I'm Korean, but I'm more like Korean American, right? I was born in the States. Our cultures are a little bit different, although we're both Korean. Sure. So like we didn't really connect in that aspect. But like a lot of players that, and Scott Stallings, who's a good friend of mine too, was out there before I was. And there's just, everyone is so helpful that I, had a lot of players that I was able to just pick their brain. If I get paired with like a veteran. So one example, like I remember it was my rookie year, I was playing in Vegas. I got paired with Stuart Sink one of the final days. And, I had a really good round going. Like I was like, I think I ended up shooting either 7 under the last day, but I ended up like bogeying the last hole from like middle of the fairway, like just kind of a silly bogey to end the round. And I was in the parking lot kind of getting my stuff, and Stuart Sink comes up to me and he goes, hey buddy, like played a really, really nice round today. Like, like he just kind of like gave me a perspective change. Like, yes, I bogeyed my last hole from middle of the fairway when I had this really nice round going, and I just let that bogey ruin my day in a sense, and Stuart was kind of gave me a, hey bud, like you played really good, like you need to like soak that in. So that was like something that was really nice of him to do. And he didn't have to do that. And I remember that to this day. And so there's a lot of guys out there that, taught me a lot and helped me grow as a person and as a golfer. So,
and I wonder how, I wonder how common that is in other sports. Cause you see golfers on the PGA Tour, like notably remember, Stricker helping Tiger out with his putting stroke, or, other pros helping, other pros get better. Right. And it's almost like rising tides, elevates all ships, right? In a sense where it's like, well, if this guy gets better, I'm going to have to get better. And that's not a bad thing, right? It's not like this, I got to keep everybody down or not make sure no one gets better. It's almost like, well, if he gets better, I'm going to have to step my game up. And that's never a bad thing. So I think that's cool about golf as well, that I've seen at least.
Yeah, 100%. I think, I think you're spot on that if everyone gets better, it benefits everybody, So there really aren't that, I can't speak for everyone, but I think a lot of the guys are genuine in the fact that if you ask for help, they will give you their advice and try to help you. So no one's going to try to sabotage your technique and be like, oh, hey, do this. You know what I mean? So
all right. I'm asking you to help me then. You seem to be the short game guy. You said you're great at it. I've watched your stuff on Instagram. You have a fantastic technique, and the way you teach it looks to be like you have some very sound principles. Can you explain to us what you're talking about and what you're doing with your short game technique, pitching, chipping, what have you?
Yeah, so a couple of big fundamentals for me is setup. I think setup dictates pretty much, I don't know, I say like 70% of the probability of you having a successful shot. What I mean by that is if you can set your body up in a way where you can have a good low point control and use the bounce, most shots really aren't too difficult. Again, I'm not saying it's easy, but like it sets you up for success. So couple main points in my short game principles are, okay, using the bounce and having a low point ahead of the ball always. So my low point is kind of like, where does your club bottom out? And for me, I like to use a term like releasing the club a lot, meaning like letting the club head go. And a lot of amateurs, that may be such a strange concept, right? Like we're all taught like, hey, hold on to that leading it, or hold on to the handle, keep the handle ahead of the ball. I mean, there are a few shots where that's required, but like, I think sometimes that hurts people more than helps people, like I mean, I love Phil Mickelson, and I think he's a great wedge player, probably one of the best, but his hinge and hold technique is it's scary to some people, and it can get people in more trouble than good. So I like to, teach kind of like what I call like a neutral shaft, not a ton of shaft lean, and kind of using the club and the body pivot to hit the shot rather than trying to like use our hands and the kind of hold everything off, so harder to describe, but those are my couple principles that I like to share, is like learning how to use a bounce with the proper setup.
Yeah, it looks like to me on your videos that the club is set up kind of towards the center-ish of your stance, and the shaft's quite vertical.
Yes. Yeah. So that I like to kind of start with all my short game shots to kind of consider, okay, what is like a standard shot? Like, we're not trying to hit a specialty shot. We're not hit it high or low, just kind of like middle baseline, middle of the road. Like, and I like to hit those off kind of like just middle, slightly back of middle at most, to just hit these. And I like to have the shaft kind of not a ton of lean on it, really, like right above the ball, because I feel like that gives us the best opportunity to expose the bounce the most. And of course, since we took away some of that shaft angle, that I like to say I like to create the angle with the body, meaning like my upper body especially. I like to teach people to have what I call like a neutral shoulder, right? So it's kind of like the left shoulder and the right shoulder, do your best to like them feel pretty level for those standard shots, so that it helps us, or helps the player keep that low point just slightly ahead of the ball, with the shaft not being so far ahead of the ball. So that's yeah.
Is that a pretty typical technique or, type of pitch shot on the PGA Tour?
I would say yes. I would say a lot of guys, they do a great job of using their bounce, and they do a good job of, if you watch a lot of golf on TV, a couple commonalities are like guys have great flow in their shot. No one's trying to hit these jabby shots. Everything has good flow to it. And also, like, unless they're trying to hit some low shots, like, especially keep your eye on their, like, where the club is when they're trying to hit these softer shots, where there's not a ton of green to work with. Not many people are going to have a ton of shaft lean on those shots, and just they're going to do whatever it takes to create the most amount of bounce. And I think when people can use the bounce properly, their flat spot gets a little bit more, so bigger margin for error, really.
Wider arc, right?
Yeah, so you don't have to be as perfect,
Yeah.
So especially under pressure, you're trying to hit a chip shot. It's like, okay, like, knowing that you don't have to be perfect, it gives that more freedom and be able to have more flow into the shot as well. So they kind of bounce off each other.
So you have a bunch of people in Phoenix that are trying to be aspiring tour professionals. When they come to you, do they already seem to have that technique, or is that kind of something that you would be teaching them to use? How would you work with a pretty skilled player who's looking to get to the next level, to the tour?
Yeah, I think most good players that come to me for some short game lessons, in general, most people struggle with kind of like, okay, sometimes my chips come out too hot, or sometimes my chips come out a little bit dead. That just tells me their low point or their loft control is a little inconsistent. So what I mean by that is, better players all have an understanding that, how the pivot should work, how they need to hit a shot, right? It's just, generally speaking, I think more people struggle with the timing of, the shaft leaning too much and how the club face is oriented in the backswing, really. So that seems to be the common denominator, is like they just basically almost decrease their loft from where it starts, so that they have to manipulate the loft on the way down. So if we can start at a place where we don't have to create that manipulation, that leads to more consistency. So that's the common thing that I see with better players, is that most people, their brains know, like, this is how I need to hit this shot. But if the ball starts coming out a little bit differently, then they start reacting to that. And that's where they get the little inconsistency that, a bad chip, becomes like a 6-footer instead of a 4-footer, we're talking smaller margins here with better players. But once they understand the concept of, oh, okay, this is the loft that's being started with, this is the loft that it should be delivered, then the ball starts reacting more consistently rather than it's different every time. And when it's different every time, it doesn't even matter how much you practice. It's going to be harder to control, because they're like, oh, that's my feel for a 10-yard chip. Oh, it came out to be 12 yards this time, 8 yards this time. Like, you don't know what's coming. So being able to have that proper loft control seems to be the biggest, I should say the most common thing that I help players with around here.
Yeah. And I've seen your post on Instagram, looks like you're really trying to line that shaft back up to vertical, by the time the club's coming through that golf ball. And maybe just a little pivot forward just gets that handle slightly ahead of the club head, but it's definitely not the goal of your pitch shot. So that, it looks sick. It looks like you're, nice floaty spinners, and you can do kind of whatever you want with the ball. It looks awesome.
Yeah. I love to, like, kind of teach people, like, the standard shots off the middle of your stance, so that once you get good at that, now you can get creative. And since you understand, okay, this is how it feels to deliver that loft, now if I move the ball up, move the ball back, like, I can still have the same release pattern. So you can have a variety of shots that you can hit without changing a whole lot of things, right? I'm not going to have 3 different setups for or 3 different styles, or to hit all these different shots. I like to say, just by adjusting some stuff in your setup, but you can still keep the same release pattern, so that you can have more consistency of hitting different shots. And it's a cool way to kind of, I feel like, once you get to the understanding of how to hit the standard shot, the other shots become pretty easy, honestly, once you understand the concept. Yeah.
Well, if this tour thing doesn't work out for you, man, I think you got a great career in coaching. Between the technique, the mental side of it, the work ethic, and then the life parallels, dude, I want to sign up for some lessons, man. That's awesome.
Yeah, I was just thinking, I'm going to be in Scottsdale in a couple of weeks. I'm going to come see you for a little short game.
Sounds good. Sounds good.
Man, well, We really appreciate you coming on. We've kept you for a little while, and but I've learned a ton, and I think this talk has been opened my eyes to a lot of cool things. I mean, I'm gonna be using that welcome the ball and those 3 words for a lot of my players, and just telling them, hey, you got to embrace every situation you come across, and it's not good or bad. We don't know yet, right? Because a
Right.
lot of people hit a shot and they mind immediately goes to bogey, but it's like we don't even know yet until we get up to our ball. We don't even know if the situation sucks. So you could just beat yourself up for 5 minutes walking down the fairway, and you get there and there's a perfect opening between the hole and the trees that you're in. So I
Yeah.
mean, I think just having that mindset of let's explore the possibilities of today and just go embrace the challenges is such a good way to approach it from. But yeah, man, I'm coming to see you. I can't wait to see kind of what you do, as far as playing, but also coaching, because I think what you're talking about is some really deep stuff.
Yeah, no, thank you guys for having me. And I think that's a great point you bring up with welcome the ball. Like it really, you truly don't know what's around the corner, right? Like you you really don't know, like, okay, I just birdied my last 2 holes. You don't know what's around the corner. Or I just made a double bogey, but you still don't know what's ahead on the next hole. So it's like it's easy to kind of like let what happened previously dictate what's going to happen, but it really doesn't. It's just really having that attitude of being able to move on and just welcoming that each situation, to what it gives you every time. I think that's just a great golf and life advice that I take it to heart, and I think it's so applicable to so many situations. So
100%.
um, yeah, for sure.
That's awesome, Richard. Thanks again for sharing that with us. Thanks for all your wisdom and insight. Where can people find you if they're going to be looking for you for golf lessons? Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I'm based out of Scottsdale, Arizona. I teach out of a golf course called McDowell Mountain Golf Course. People can find me on Instagram. I believe it's Richard Lee _ PGA. I hope I'm right. And
They'll find you.
yeah, and if people can just find me there for more information. Yeah, thanks for you guys doing what you guys do. I know you guys have a great successful coaching careers as well, and huge social media followings and sharing your wisdom. So I'm thankful for having me on the show, and enjoyed the talk, and looking forward to this journey together. So thanks
Yeah,
for
man.
having me, guys.
I like
Yes,
that
sir.
perspective. Together, man, we're all helping each
Yeah.
other.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
Awesome, man. Thanks again. We'll be in touch, and I'd love to see this friendship blossom into something bigger and further down the line.
Awesome, guys. Thanks for having me today.
Thanks, Richard. Take care, buddy.
All right. See you guys.
See you,
Bye.
buddy.